Welcome. You're on The Fringe Show. I'm your host, Tatiana Zalan, and I go live every Friday at 2 p.m. Dubai time. The Fringe is about our future: science, technology, art, economy, and society. I'll help you to navigate the rapidly changing world and uncertain future so that you too can take advantage of the opportunities and make better decisions. My last show was about Twitter, the acquisition of Twitter by Elon Musk, and what it means for Twitter, Twitter's future direction, the acquisition strategy. I posed the question whether Musk succeed. And the news of Elon Musk taking over Twitter has put Mastodon into the public spotlight. No, I'm not talking about Mastodon, the extinct animal. It's an alternative social network. Launched in 2016, Mastodon describes itself as a free, open-source, decentralized social media platform that strives to be a viable alternative to Twitter. Some observers describe it as a Web3 platform, and we'll have a look into it. Is it really a Web3 or not? And some have suggested that what we're witnessing is almost like a battle between Web3 and Web2 social media. And generally, can social media be done differently? Is Mastodon a viable alternative to Twitter? These are exactly the questions that we're going to have a look at on this show. The usual disclaimer: the views are my own. They do not represent the official views of organizations and employers I'm associated with. The Fringe Show is for educational purposes only. It's not any sort of investment advice. Let's start probably with just thinking about why Mastodon is important. Since Elon Musk took over Twitter in late October this year, people started to leave Twitter after this acquisition. They're leaving for alternative platforms: Mastodon, Lens, TikTok, maybe some others as well. Twitter seems to be moving on to becoming super app like WeChat, which is essentially a messenger. We've heard about layoffs. I'm sure you've heard about them at Twitter. Then competition intensifies. Telegram, a messenger, has recently introduced social media-like features. Mastodon has drawn in almost 500,000 new users, bringing total monthly active users to more than 1 million. Of course, it's a tiny fraction compared to Twitter's 238 or so million daily users. And the founder himself said, his name is Eugene Rochko, I don't think Mastodon or the Fediverse has ever received much attention before. It's a great opportunity for people to finally see that social media can be done differently, that it can be a protocol not under control of any single company. And Mastodon generally presents a vision of a social media platform that cannot be bought and owned by any billionaire, and strive to create a more resilient global platform without any profit incentives. And precisely because of that, Mastodon has been bad-mouthed. It makes no money for investors. It doesn't have any shitcoin shills. There's no coin, so not a lot of money to be made, obviously. Let's have a look at some of the statistics and what's Mastodon's background, generally speaking. Rather than being a single platform, it describes itself as a network of millions of users in independent communities that can interact with one another. Its population, so to speak, or the number of accounts, is something like 4.5 or 6 million. Active users are just over 1 million, 1.3 million, and it has more than 4,000 servers. They call them instances. So there are numerous servers dedicated and created specifically for certain communities and dedicated to various interests, spheres of knowledge, regions, and activities. Their motto is almost like find your perfect community if you go to Mastodon's website. It's an open source decentralized project. Its software was developed by the German GmbH, German company, German non-for-profit, really, led by Eugene Rochko, launched in 2016, as I already mentioned. What do we really mean by open source? Well, anyone can download, modify, and install Mastodon on their server. Plus, the developers of the platform don't own the copyright. That's very different from Twitter and other social media platforms. But we'll get to that. We'll get into these differences between Mastodon and Twitter on who is better. Mastodon is a crowd-funded non-profit. It funds only the full-time work of Rochko. Rochko is his sole employee and perhaps supports some popular service. Also, being an open source means that Mastodon's original source code is publicly available and can be changed. People like developers, you can contribute to code. You can find and fix bugs, add new features, and translate the interface into several languages. How do you join? To join Mastodon, you need to sign up for an account on a server. There is a server called joinmastodon.org, or download any official app from Android or iOS. The server can be home to your account, your profile, your feeds. Some servers allow immediate registration, others require an approval or an invitation. Unlike Twitter, there is no central Mastodon website. You sign up to a provider that will host your account, and that's a major difference. It's similarly to signing up for Outlook or Gmail, and then you can follow and interact with people using different providers. Anyone can become such a provider with Mastodon because, again, it's a free and open source platform. It has no ads, it respects your privacy, and allows people and communities to self-govern. You can get your virtual server running for about $5 to $10 a month with decent bandwidth and a lot of people to use it. So it's pretty much comparable to what Twitter is now going to charge for the verification blue tick. You can recoup the expenses, these expenses through ads if you wish, or maybe even subscriptions, or you can split the cost amongst friends, amongst your community members. The dwellers in Mastodon are called Mastonauts, and the equivalent of tweets are called toots. I don't know about that one. I don't really like the name. What about the content? What kind of content is being published? Mastodon publishes 500-character messages with pictures, polls, videos, and so on to an audience of followers. You can follow interesting people, receive their posts in the chronological home feed, and that's important. It's chronological. It looks like hosting your own Mastodon server is going to cost you not much, really, except when you pay to host your own Mastodon server. You own your data, your identity, and your social graph fully. All Mastodon servers are interoperable, and that allows you to follow and be followed by other users quite seamlessly on the platform. Now, let's have a look at how Mastodon is different from Twitter. In many ways, it is similar to Twitter. You make a profile, you have your followings, your followers as well, people who follow you. You write posts. These are toots, remember? This is how they're called. You can attach media, you can reply, you can share. There are hashtags, there is a news tab. Mastodon supports a number of Twitter conventions like replies, retweets, favorites, bookmarks, and hashtags. And although Mastodon visually resembles Twitter, its user experience is more similar to that of Discord. Many of you, I'm sure, if you're in the crypto community, you live on Discord. It's a talking and texting app where people also join servers and have their own cultures and rules. So that's very similar to Mastodon. Mastodon might look like Twitter clone at first glance, but the underlying system is far more complex. Anyone, as we said, can create their own version of Mastodon. It's a server called a server with rules and regulations that apply only to this version. And these rules and regulations are enforced by the people who use that version. The differentiating factor here between Mastodon and Twitter and Facebook is that on Mastodon, when you host your own server, you can also decide on the rules that you want to enforce. And that means that your community will be a much safer space. Twitter, Facebook, and all these larger platforms are more interested in serving as many people as possible. And that because it drives engagement up on purpose to increase the time people spend on the web. On Mastodon, it's slightly different. Twitter is a social, or rather single social network. That means that people sign up for and share content only on Twitter. With Mastodon, you have what is known as a federated platform, meaning it is a collection of social networks or servers, and they link together but are owned by very different groups of people. Mastodon itself is part of what we call the Fediverse, a federated universe. It's a group of federated platforms that share communication protocols. You know how having a Twitter account doesn't really mean you can use an account on Instagram? Well, through the Fediverse, your single Mastodon account also grants you access to other decentralized social networks. Unlike Twitter, Facebook, and Facebook and some other social platforms, Mastodon presents posts in chronological order. It's not based on an algorithm. It does not seem to flood people with content based on content they've already viewed and approved. It also has no ads and focused on, which I think is wonderful, and is focused on privacy. Mastodon is largely crowdfunded. Most servers are funded by people who use them. The servers that Mastodon oversees, like Mastodon Social or Mastodon Online, are funded indeed through Patreon. There's no hate speech allowed, no sexism, no racism, no homophobia, or transphobia. There is a downside, however, and in Twitter is probably better in that respect. Twitter supports a variety of media and other data appended to tweets, audio-only social spaces. I'm personally a big fan of Spaces, Twitter Spaces. It has photos, it has videos and GIFs and polls and precise location and experimental status tag and so on. Mastodon is a bit simpler in that regard. It supports images, videos, audio, and polls. Now, let's have a look at who is the founder behind Mastodon, who is Eugene Rochko. He's 29-year-old. He developed Mastodon with crowdfunding through Patreon, as well as Open Collective, and that's an open source development grant from Samsung. He's a German citizen. He's born into a Jewish-Russian family, studied computer science at Friedrich Schiller University. It's a public university in Germany. He began coding Mastodon in 2016 after he was disillusioned with Twitter. And this is what he's saying as far as his Twitter experience went. I was thinking that being able to express myself online to my friends through short messages was very important to me, important also to the world, and that maybe it should not be in the hands of a single corporation. So that was his motivation to creating Mastodon. And sometimes he is asked, well, why Mastodon? Why it's funny name? And he just explains it calmly that he's not very good at naming things, and whatever came to his mind, he named it at that time. By the way, Mastodon is also a very popular American band. It was, according to his own admission, a very much hobbyist project at the time. Maybe this is the reason it looks and does whatever it does at the moment. Then when it was launched publicly, it seemed to strike a chord, particularly with the tech community. And that's how Rochko got his original Patreon supporters that allowed him to take on this job full time. absolutely had no ambition of going big at that time, back then, 6 years ago. And this is again him saying, until the past 5 years that I've been running Mastodon operations as sole proprietor, where Mastodon's income was my personal income minus all the expenses. I'm now an employee with a fixed wage. My personal income will thus be lower, but I was willing to go this route because I want Mastodon to have more resources for things like hiring extra developers, UX designers, developing official apps, and so on. And I want there to be clear boundary between fundraising for that cause and my personal income. Now, what are people saying about Mastodon's user experience? I collected a few quotes from social media, what people are saying, how they've used Mastodon. And so here you are. The user experience, the first one I liked really a lot. The user experience for most of the Mastodon and Fediverse stuff I've seen is not great. It's made by volunteers, open source fans, programmers, techies, the same kind of folks who helped open up the internet in the 90s so that many people could use it. Don't complain that the interface is bad. It's bad because this thing is decentralized, is not capitalized, its users are not products, and Elon Musk can't buy it. Others are saying, when I read about how there are all these decentralized servers and interest groups, I lost interest in pursuing Mastodon further. The beauty of Twitter is that you can find everybody you want to hear from in one place. It's clean, neat, and organized, referring to Twitter. Also, I prefer to read on my laptop, not scroll through my phone. Actually, I prefer that too. I admit that Mastodon instances are a bit complicated for my 84-year-old mother to understand, and I still have a hard time interacting with people on other servers. It's a bit of a mess that should have been sorted out years ago. It's far less intuitive to navigate since it hasn't been designed for a massive global audience like Twitter. That could change in time as more developers join the project in the wake of Twitter. All for the privilege of using a service that has half the features and reach of Twitter. Does it have potential? Sure. I will keep the server around and see if I can make it work for a new NFT project community I'm working on. Could be useful for gated communities. So this is what users say. And there's one more risk that hasn't kind of been mentioned, but according to some analysts, self-hosting can be a disaster. And we all want to understand the idea of wanting to own our own identity, not having our data stolen, so on. But the idea that a service you can use would disappear quickly, abruptly, without any notice does not sound very appealing to many. Well, I actually created an account on Mastodon myself. I looked at what are the topics and servers. There were only 2 art-related. I'm interested in art, particularly in digital art. I joined one server. It's very similar to Discord, set up a profile. And generally, this was a very easy experience. I didn't go any further. I didn't do anything complicated like following others or inviting others to follow me. But see how I go. So far, so good. Not ideal, but so far quite okay. I think a bigger question here is Mastodon a really decentralized social network? And I went to Ethereum Foundation because I think it's probably one of the best descriptions of what a decentralized social network should look like. They have several kind of tests or several characteristics, and let's have a look whether a Mastodon stacks up where it stands according to these tests. Firstly, censorship resistant and open to anyone. This means that users cannot be banned, deplatformed, or restricted arbitrarily. Secondly, a decentralized network should be built on open source ideals, and make source code for applications available for public inspections. It should eliminate the middleman. Content creators have direct ownership of the content. They engage directly with followers, fans, buyers, other parties, with nothing but a smart contract in between. It should be less susceptible to server downtime and outages. It should offer an improved monetization framework for content creators. It can be through non-fungible tokens or in-app crypto payments or in some other form. It should also have a high level of privacy and anonymity. For instance, an individual can sign onto Ethereum-based social network using ENS profile or wallet. Those of you who are using Ethereum will know what I'm talking about. And that's without having to share personally identifiable information like names or email addresses. And seventh, it should have decentralized storage, not decentralized databases, which is considerably better for safeguarding user data. Now, if you look at Mastodon, it ticks some of these boxes, but not others. So it can't be really considered to be a full-scale, full-blown decentralized network. Eugene himself has made some statements about how decentralized Mastodon is and what he thinks personally about decentralization. There is a very interesting blog article on his on Mastodon itself, and I invite you to read it. I'm sure you'll pick up some interesting ideas about decentralization. Firstly, and it's kind of understandable to everyone that decentralization upends all these social network business models, but dramatically reducing operating costs. Because no single server on Mastodon needs to grow beyond its comfort zone and financial capacity. The entry cost into that, into having your own server, is near zero. And an operator of a Mastodon server does not need to seek venture capital, because that will put pressure on you having to monetize your business in some way. Monetization in social media networks, as we know, typically means ads. Changing the website to have people see more ads, invading people's privacy to make sure they've seen all these ads. There is this old adage that if you are not paying, then you're the product. A single website has all your data logged in, and if successful, they will have such strong network effects that they can get away with poor service without having to fear that you will leave the platform. And if it shuts down, or if there is a rug pull, then the game is over, and then all your posts and connections will be gone. Decentralization is biodiversity of the digital world, the sign of a healthy ecosystem. It allows different users to have different user interfaces, different software, different forms of governance to coexist. A monoculture may not survive when disaster strikes. A decentralized network is also more resilient to censorship. It's a myth that larger corporations can resist government demands. In practice, commercial companies struggle to meet all these government demands. And a very good example is Twitter used to, in the past, and I'm not sure whether they're doing it now, but in the past, they regularly blocked some Turkish activists. The strength of a decentralized network is in numbers. Some servers will be blocked, but some will comply, but others will not. Not all will comply, so some will remain. Decentralization is also about fixing power asymmetry. If you think about a centralized social media platform, there are rules, and these rules are enforced. The development direction of the platform, they're all decided by the CEO, and users will have almost no say. It's sticky. You can't walk away with the platform from the platform because it holds all your history, your friends, your contacts, your audience. A decentralized network will deliberately release control over the platform owner. And essentially, there's no one on Mastodon. As the developer of Mastodon, Eugene himself is just an advisory influence. He's not the CEO in a traditional sense. Now, some concluding thoughts. Is this a legit alternative to Twitter, a viable alternative? I certainly think it is. Mastodon right now is experiencing massive influx of new users from Twitter. But it's not clear whether the platform will continue growing at such a rapid rate in the weeks and months ahead. So be careful. Mastodon is not prepared to host millions of people in a short span of time. That's very clear. And its service went down, and people were complaining about that. Some of the most popular servers are overloaded. There's no platform coin. Well, some will say it's not really a Web3 thing, but it's probably a good thing that there is no coin, so there's no speculation. It's clearly not there yet in terms of user experience. But let's not forget it's run on donations from people, from ordinary people like you and me, and not on generous funding from billionaires or venture capitalists. Will the federated model work at scale? I'm personally not sure. It's still an open question. Mastodon is decentralized, but it's not Web3. It's a Web2 tech stack. It shares some principles of Web3, certainly with the decentralization and open source, which are true of some Web3 companies. It does not leverage any technology for its underlying stack. Identity or profiles, consensus, transactions, this is not there. But indeed, are blockchains really necessary for Web3? Some analysts are claiming they're not. But definitely give it a go. This is what I'm suggesting to my audience. You may like it. There's a lot of space to be explored. There are, for example, if you're interested in crypto, NFT, it's time for you maybe to create a server. There are no really servers dedicated to this topic yet. So give it a go. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining The Fringe, my show, and I will be on The Fringe show next Friday at 2 p.m. Dubai time. See you soon.